Welcome to the Doggy Dutch audio stories, where weekly card readings open into reflections on manifestation, systems, sovereignty, and everyday life. Brought to you by the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me. The line is not the limit coloring book and the walking the universe ecosystem for manifestation. Episode 12. Have you ever been taught that growth means what came before was flawed? This episode is for such moments. The title for today's story is The Collage and Its Layers.
Dutch has been reflecting on his social justice and manifestation oracle card pull. A reading drawn using the thesis of us oracle cards for social justice and the metaphor for life manifestation oracle cards. Available for instant download from the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me.
The cards in the reading were Surrender Attachment, Integrate Enoughness, Emerge Fierce, and Reclaim Celebration.
Dutch is letting the reading sit beside him, carrying the cards quietly, and noticing what reveals itself.
Dutch was working on a collage. He had been at it for a while, adding pieces, stepping back, reconsidering, and layering.
He loved the way a collage never told you where it was going, the way it evolved, how early choices didn't disappear, how they stayed, held underneath later ones, how every choice was part of the foundation, even when they were not the focus anymore.
The evolving collage made him think about his evolving affirmations. He remembered where they had started, with I am abundant, I am supplied, I am prosperous, I am wealthy.
Then those words shifted to I am abundance, I am supply, I am wealth, I am prosperity.
And recently they shifted again to I am the abundance, I am the supply, I am the wealth, I am the prosperity.
Dutch noticed something. Although his affirmations changed and evolved, none of it had been wrong.
Dutch saw that he had been conditioned to read change differently. He had been socialized to think movement meant what came before had been off.
He realized that he was not taught to see change, growth, or evolution as layering the way he did with the collage.
Dutch took a breath. He looked at his collage and wondered where that story came from.
It dawned on Dutch that it was a system story. A story of either or that said,
either work hard enough so you can arrive at stability, or rest and fail.
Either comply so you can possibly be rewarded or face being on the outside if you resist.
Either you produce so you can earn worth, or have no value if you don't.
Do it right, and something might arrive.
Do it wrong, and nothing will.
Simple. Clean. Binary.
Black or white. No gray. No nuance.
Just a verdict. Right or wrong. Success or failure.
And Dutch began to wonder if the erasure of gray wasn't accidental, but if it was instead a form of camouflage that hid the system, a curtain veiling it from examination.
No gray means the system bears no responsibility. Outcomes are never causal back to the system.
No ambiguity means conditions never need to be examined. Accountability is not traced back to the system. It is placed elsewhere, projected onto the person.
Dutch realized that the either or binary also set terms for the value of evolution.
And the system's binary only recognized evolution as valid when it moved toward what the system had already defined as acceptable.
The binary of either or turned outcomes into compliance assessments and character judgments.
Either you were productive in ways that kept the system moving, or you were lazy.
Either you were disciplined enough to follow the system's recipe, or you were lacking.
Either you were moving in the direction the system defined, or you were failing.
The labels were never really about who you were. They were about whether you were serving the system's continuation.
And once that camouflage was in place, the system no longer needed to explain itself, because the explanation was already written.
Deficit, with the person's name on it.
Dutch let that settle as he continued collaging.
As he layered, Dutch noticed something else. The system structure doesn't need to be enforced loudly, because once it is learned, it begins to repeat itself through language, through advice, through everyday conversation. The culture carries it, through friends who say, either you do it differently or it won't change, and through spiritual teachings that say, Either you align or you stay stuck.
Dutch observed that what looks like encouragement and support often carries the same instruction: comply with the system.
He realized that the binary was not only maintained by rules, but also by repetition. Through the well-meaning advice of people who were also taught that the answer was always inside the person, never in the conditions surrounding them.
That demand had another name: assimilation.
The disguised message was, assimilate or face the consequences.
Either you conformed to what the system recognized, or you were outside it, and being outside it came with a cost.
The story systems fabricated was built on personal fault,
The system designed and constructed the conditions,
then handed you the bill for them.
and called that bill your failure.
Not failure because of what the system erected,
Failure because you weren't obeying.
because you weren't following their blueprint and deviated from their architecture.
And through that story, the system never had to name itself culpable.
It never had to be accountable, because any undesirable outcome was projected only onto your incompliance.
Dutch realized he had seen that same pattern inside manifestation teachings:
Teachings that sorted experience into two positions:
aligned or misaligned,
allowing or blocking.
in belief or in doubt.
According to manifestation teachings, either you were aligned and your desire was arriving,
Or you were unaligned and so was not.
redirecting every outcome solely back onto the individual, tracing it to which side of the either or they were on.
The same binary used by the system, just renamed, different language, same structure.
It became apparent to Dutch that what was framed as spiritual alignment was a synonym for assimilation.
He found that to be aligned meant ignoring what was present, pretending it did not exist.
Naming systems and their conditions was labeled as resistance, as not following the teaching, as being on the wrong side of the binary.
And Dutch found himself wondering if manifestation dogma required him to ignore the systems at play, not because those systems were absent, but because naming them would interrupt the story that everything was just a fix.
Dutch saw how not acknowledging systems, even for a spiritual practice, left the system undisturbed, while still holding him responsible for what unfolded within them.
It became obvious to Dutch that manifestation and spiritual teachings confirmed the system.
Dutch paused there. He still believed authorship mattered. He still believed he had a relationship with how he moved through his life. But he no longer wanted to confuse authorship with blame.
That, he thought, was the card surrender attachment, not as concept, as experience.
And in that distinction, something opened. He looked back at his layered affirmations, not as a record of corrections, but as a continuum of expansion.
None of what came before had been wrong.
I am abundance still had its place.
I am abundance still had its place.
And so did I am the abundance.
Every version of his affirmation was available to him, on any day, in any moment, every point on the continuum relevant.
And Dutch thought, this is the card integrate enoughness. Not as concept, as experience.
It occurred to Dutch that evolution was not correction. It was not shedding what came before.
Evolution was greater awareness, more expansiveness, more language available, not less.
In holding all of that, Dutch realized he was refusing something.
He was refusing the insistence from systems that there was one right way,
One right formula.
one right level of consciousness that signaled arrival,
One recipe everyone must follow.
one box everyone must fit. Dutch saw how his affirmations had kept growing without needing to look like anyone else's, without their evolution being verdict.
And Dutch thought that was a card to merge fears, not as concept, as experience.
Dutch found himself wondering, not just about his affirmations, but about the mechanism underneath.
He wondered why the system's binary demanded such precision.
And he realized that precision has a purpose. That once the world is organized in black and white, a correct way to move through it gets created.
And if there's a right way, the task becomes, get it right.
And if you don't, the binary already knows where to place the failure.
Not in the conditions, not in the structure.
In you.
That is why perfectionism is demanded. Precision keeps the point of failure locatable. And the binary needs the blame deflected to one place, with the individual.
Dutch noticed that the binary does more than demand precision. It also removes the gray, because if there were a middle, if the gray was seen and acknowledged, the questions would change.
It would no longer be, did you do it right or did you do it wrong?
It would become, what conditions were present? What was available? What was shaping the outcome beyond the individual?
Those kinds of questions threaten the system, so the binary eliminates them.
And once that happens, perfectionism becomes necessary.
When there is only right and wrong, precision is the only way through.
Once an outcome is tied to correctness, and correctness is tied to the individual, accuracy becomes the requirement. Perfectionism becomes the training. Thoughts are monitored. Language is adjusted. Feelings are evaluated, not simply experienced, but measured. And over time, the person becomes both participant and the subject of interrogation. They interrogate themselves, questioning whether they are aligned enough, correct enough, the right version of themselves to produce the outcome.
And others interrogate them the same way.
A right way means anything outside is wrong. And when what you sought has not arrived, that absence is no longer just a result. It becomes a verdict on the person.
Dutch remembered something from his Walk in the Universe workbook, which he downloaded from the Etsy shop Alchemy of Me. He recalled a chapter on salivating at bells that covered manifestation and intermittent reward.
The chapter talked about how a bell was rung and how sometimes food was given. Over time, the bell itself caused salivation, even when no food appeared. The response was tied to the bell, to the sound of possibility, and it was no longer tied to nourishment anymore.
And Dutch wondered how much of the perfectionism training had worked the same way.
The outcome didn't have to arrive every time to keep the system in place. Intermittent reward was enough.
Enough arrival to make the binary's tactics feel real.
Enough absence to make the next correction feel necessary.
That was what kept it going.
Not reward, the possibility of it.
Dutch picked up the collage, and as he did, something lifted, not a conclusion, not an arrival, a release.
A release from needing to get it right in order to continue. A willingness to remain in process without turning every moment into a test.
And Dutch found himself thinking that this was something worth celebrating.
He took a breath and recalled the card reclaimed celebration from his reading and held it.
Not as concept, as experience.
It became clear to Dutch that not everything requires perfection to proceed.
Not everything exists inside a right or wrong structure.
Some things live in the gray, in the space between the binary's two positions.
Where conditions can be named.
Where the structure can be examined.
Where the person is not the only place the answer lives.
The collage had lived there.
His affirmations had lived there.
And the gray, he realized, had always been there.
Even in the binary, holding room for him. The end. If something in this met you, take a breath with Dutch and let it simmer for a moment. Let's breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold together. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep noticing what reveals itself along the way. And remember, if you would like to perform your own readings, the Thesis of a Social Justice Oracle cards and the Metaphor for Life Manifestation Oracle cards are available for print and immediate download from the Etsy shop, Alchemy of Me.